I want to talk to you today about technology in education. My name is Matthew Seaman, and I just want you to review a little bit. I want to give you a scenario. So, suppose you're in high school. That's probably not hard for most of you to suppose because you are in high school. And you go through all your classes, and you go through all 4 years of high school, and then you're ready to graduate. And graduating is really exciting because you're graduating. You're going to get a job, and you probably already have a job, but you're really going to get your first job since you've graduated from high school. Maybe you're going to go off to college, but while you're in college, you're likely going to go get a job. And when you go get a job, you're going to say you pass the interview and you get into the job, and then you go home and you think, well, I actually have a lot to learn. And maybe it's not because you don't know what you're doing at your actual job, but maybe it's because this company has deployed lots of technology, and it's just going to take some time for you to get used to it. And it's okay that it takes some time to get used to it. But I'm advocating that it's going to be a lot harder for you to get used to these workplaces and this technology because your school did not use the necessary initiatives that they could have done with technology in education. I've done a lot of research in this area for several years, and I'm advocating that technology in education is a must. So I'd like to start with some advantages. And I've got to start with the textbook because the textbook is a fundamental thing of an educational institution. But there's all kinds of things that describe the textbook. And there's all kinds of words that describe the textbook. They're expensive, they're heavy, they're numerous, and they're static. And I just want to go through every one of these things. And I want to start with the fact that they're expensive. Textbooks cost schools probably $50 to $100 for each textbook. And if you're in college, that's money that the student has to pay, not that the school is going to pay for it. They're also heavy, and I think it goes together that they're also numerous. And what I mean by heavy and numerous is that you have a lot of different textbooks, and each one is heavy. And so what teachers are starting to find, and not starting to find, they've found this for a long time, is that students will just stop bringing textbooks to class because they're just too tedious for them to do that. They think whenever you deploy technology in education, you don't have that problem. Generally, students are always going to bring their one device to class. And they're also, digital textbooks are much less expensive. But I think one of the key points is the fact that they're static. And what I mean by static is that a textbook is a printed page, so it can only be a picture. So if you're in science class and you're learning about a cell membrane or a DNA string, you only can see something in 2D, it can't move, and it's just that, it's 2D. With a digital textbook, you can rotate something around with your finger, see a 3D molecule of DNA like it really is, or see something that should be moving and see how it actually moves over time. And it's actually really enhancing education in institutions across the nation. Of course, we also have to deal with the whiteboard, and this is our whiteboard today. The thing about a whiteboard is that it's kind of half static. And what I mean by that is you can draw on it and change what's on this board, but you're not really having anything that can move by itself. With something like a projector, you can see moving pictures, aka video, but of course, even that stops because there's no interaction. With something like a smartboard or an Apple TV, you can actually touch, whether it be the iPad or the TV itself, and that's really going to, it really has helped a lot in education, and it really complements the digital textbook. I advocate that we replace our whiteboards with technology, and then will really help the education experience. Lastly, for advantages that I want to talk about today is student-teacher interaction. And we have to admit that there is home and there is school, and I think there's a wall in between. And I think that wall is caused because without technology, it's very difficult for the student and the teacher to communicate outside of school. And sometimes that's a good thing, but more often than not, that hinders education. And I think that if we break down those walls, and if we really have an interconnected system where technology can flow freely across students and teachers, that the education, even while a student is working on homework, is going to be a lot more beneficial to the student. But I've got to talk about some objections. because I can't advocate for anything without accommodating for the objections. And I'd like to start with something that a lot of people have talked a lot about, and that is distraction. When you're going to be given a device to a student, there's a lot of possibility that you're going to be distracted. You're opening them up into a world where they can do things that are not intended for education. But there's two major points that really invalidate that. One of that is that you have to prepare students for the future. Whenever you go to your job and you sit down, let's say you work in an office, if you sit down at your desk, you're going to have a computer and you're going to have access to whatever you want online. And you've got to learn the self-control in high school and in your higher education that you're going to need in the future. And there's also a lot of studies that have been done that really prove that this distraction, the technology itself is really actually helping high schools and colleges increase their pass rates. We have to cross that off the list. And we also have to talk about security and privacy. This is an issue that has to do with what you would learn in high school in something like this class, like at the beginning of the year, whenever we learned about digital citizenship. And this is something that needs to be taught, but it also needs to be practiced. Because if you don't practice what you teach, it's not going to be used in the future. And once again, you need to prepare students for the future. I'm going to cross that off as well. But lastly, I need to talk about something called technology in the workplace. And the thing about technology in the workplace is just like in the scenario that I gave at the very beginning, it's obviously there. Whether you work at something that pays you minimum wage or you're at a Fortune 500 company, they're deploying technology. And maybe not to every employee, but they're using it throughout their workplace, and they are continuing to use more and more technology. And at least from what I've seen, at least what I think is that it's the educational institution's point, it's their main goal to prepare students for the future. So I have a question. And that question is that if schools are meant to prepare students for the future, shouldn't we consider the future that they're entering into? And I think that the future that they're entering into is a workplace full of technology. And with that, I advocate that technology in an educational institution is an absolute must.